Which human culture or practice has shocked you the most? The Ganges River in India. People think the water has healing powers and shit. They drink it and bathe in it and such. It is insanely polluted. Also, if it is so holy, why do the people fill it with garbage, sewage, dead bodies, etc.? Blows my mind. I went to the Ganges during the off-season before their annual Super Holy Pilgrimage Festival. You have no idea how gross it is. Poop everywhere. Clouds of flies, clouds, cows wandering around fully nourished while people who are skinny and starving are begging for food. You would see ashes go through the river occasionally. That is the cremated remains of one's loved one. Usually the ashes were around some flowers and sent on their way. Plus I would see people go into the river, dunk themselves, then drink it, and the smell. Oh man, one of my friends said that the holier a place is in India, the grosser it is. In high school I did a project on Somalia and read about the process of female circumcision aka genital mutilation and how when it was time to consummate the marriage sometimes they'd need to carve it open with a knife so the man could fit. Makes me feel uneasy just thinking about it. Yeah, as a Somali girl that shocked me too. My parents are fortunately vehemently against it, and it is fortunately a dying practice. Child brides. WTF. One of my pet charities is the Fistula Foundation link which treats obstetric fistulas in the most impoverished countries in the world. What usually happens is some 12-15-year-old girl is married off to some guy, then suffers massive damage trying to give birth. Basically, a fistula is a hole between her vagina and her urinary tract or anus, resulting in her uncontrollably leaking feces or urine. Because she smells terrible, the husband usually throws her out and she is forced onto the fringes of society, begging for a living. The surgery to correct it is not even crazy expensive, but for a girl living in a tiny village in Somalia, 600 for a surgery is as far out of her reach as the moon. I had never considered how such a condition can impact impoverished women, but this makes a world of sense and is so heartbreaking. Thanks for sharing this charity. Papua New Guinean tribes people would make young male kids entering puberty suck out the adults' semen out of their penises to absorb their manhood and become men. The more vigorous the kid would suck, the more effective he would become a man. So they told their kids. Absolutely bizarre. This was what I was going to answer to. Absolutely depraved. Raping virgins to cure AIDS. It is horrifying and just so incredibly selfish and stupid beyond belief. Modi murders or medicine murders. In several African countries, people believe that medicine made from human body parts is especially effective. From link The New York Times. Modi murders, especially of children, remain disturbingly common. South Africa's police investigate an average of about one a month. The killings follow a pattern. A client approaches a healer, who orders a third person to collect body parts. A hand in a shop's doorway supposedly attracts customers' genitals. Allegedly enhance virility or fertility. Fat from a stomach is prescribed to ensure a good harvest. Lore says parts severed from live victims are most potent because their screams awaken supernatural powers. Parts from children are considered especially strong. Apparently you are ducked if you are an albino. They will actively hunt you in life and rob your body from your grave to grind it up and use in medicines and potions etc. And other people think they bring bad luck and kill them for that. No winning. There is a really interesting documentary on YouTube about this called Born Too White. What it's like to have albinism in Tanzania. Many of the children have to live in special fenced-off camps to protect them. Very sad, but good to see some measures are being taken to attempt to keep most of the children safe. Yeah, it's terrible. I have seen something about it before and it's shocking that it still goes on today in certain parts. Also the ratio of albinism is quite high there. It is not shocking to me personally, but many find the Agori in India very disturbing. Agar means non-terrible or non-terrifying, which seems antithetical to the appearance some sadhus take naked or wearing very little, smeared with ash from funeral pyres, using skullcaps as bowls and bones as ritual objects, practicing and sometimes living in cremation grounds. Agar philosophy revolves around the inherent divinity of all things. Every living being holds a spark of the divine. Nothing is outside of God, thus nothing is inherently evil or profane. Even the most taboo things such as dead bodies or reportedly haunted areas. The fast track to removing fear and revulsion of what is seen as bad, wrong, etc. and remove the dual view of the world is to worship God through what is considered impure and unholy liquor, meat, remnants of death. As an interesting aside, the Agori walk the talk and give women respect and spiritual authority, treat all castes equally, and there are Agori-run schools and homes in Varanasi that specifically give low caste and poor children the same education as wealthier kids, helping lift communities out of poverty and confront class discrimination and sexism. To be honest, the very idea of a low caste is to me far more shocking, disgusting than a weird religion. Do not read up on the Dalit, aka the untouchables. Such a sad state of affairs. Can you explain in the simplest terms what they are? I read what castes are and I do not understand it. I am even more confused. What are Dalit and low castes? I have watched a fair amount of documentaries about honor killings, and it disgusts me that people could value their perceived reputation more than their own blood relatives. The fact that they can kill, and usually in very brutal fashion, their own daughters, nieces, sisters, cousins in order to protect their fragile ego and supposed honor is just sickening to me. What makes it even worse is that they are supposedly trying to preserve their honor by committing one of the most dishonorable acts one can commit. Anyone who partakes in such a heinous practice is worse than scum and deserves the harshest possible punishment. I used to write for a website where we would interview people with unusual jobs or interesting histories and things like that. I did not write this particular one, but another writer did a piece on a woman who was at high risk for an honor killing from her family. She talked about how she become too westernized and how she had moved to Europe and taken steps to hide her identity, and how she had even been coached by people specializing in this sort of thing on the types of tactics families will use to lure children back home. A common one is to tell the child they have been forgiven and the parents just want a relationship with them, and then kill them once they are home. So the writer conducted a couple interviews with her. He wrote the piece and then sent it back to her for fact-checking, and nothing. The writer never heard from her again. They published the article and put a footnote on it that they had lost contact with her and asking her to get in touch to at least say she was okay. As far as I know, she never did. I think I read a similar article on Cracked a while ago. It definitely made you wonder. Hopefully it was just a case of the agency charity protecting her from herself. Follow-up articles can be so interesting, though. I can remember an article interview about anorexia, where in the first the interviewee was pro, but then a year or so later got out and completely turned on her stance. I am really happy she did, but that article was definitely a wild read. That Cracked article was the first thing I thought of. Lotus foot, just why? And the worst part is that parents did it to their own children. The foot binding was a way for peasants to hopefully marry above their class, seen as a form of beauty and wealth. To them, the long-term consequences of social mobility and putting destitution behind you may have seemed worth it. Beauty pageants for kids seems so creepy. Honestly, if it was just a for fun thing where the kids got to do their own makeup and hair and pick their own clothes and the winner was just whichever kid seemed to be having the most fun or something, that would be fine. Actually, judging on looks is creepy. Also, the kids rarely, if ever, get a say in their looks during these pageants. It is almost, if not always, the moms dictating how they should look and act. It is super objectifying and wrong. Kids are not dress-up dolls, they are people. Not to mention it sexualizes them and can leave permanent damage emotionally and sometimes physically. Imprisoning rape victims because they were raped, and throwing them in cells, where they were often raped by the policemen. Obviously this is just completely abhorrent and no one would disagree with that, but the amount of times I see people, particularly on Reddit, I have to say, show their unfettered delight at the prospect of prisoners being raped is something I find really unsettling. I am not talking about murderers or sex criminals either, although I don't think extrajudicial rape is ever something to celebrate, even for them. Just run-of-the-mill bad guys. It's like we can all agree rape is one of the most awful things you can do to someone. Unless it has taken place in a prison cell, then it's fair game, to be expected and even applauded. It's stuck up. Yeah, it's disturbing to see revenge. Personal satisfaction is mistaken for justice, moral obligation for the greater good. Of course morals are a tricky subject, but we all know that rape is ducked up. Personal feelings should never be involved when trying to judge. Rape is bad, unless I am mad, Nah dude, sit this one out. You just became a rapist by wanting rape on the rapist. It's just reasonable and logical. I don't want crime to replace the crime just so some people's twisted sense of justice can be satisfied. In some cultures, beating your wives was a social norm and slave owning. These two I could never wrap my head around why anyone thought these were okay. Cough Saudi cough. It's worse than that. Women, particularly wives of Saudi men, essentially have no rights. Even visiting people can be imprisoned on perceived slights or inappropriate behavior, such as a non-married couple touching each other in public. Not just in Saudi Arabia either. I worked with a woman a while ago who was in Dubai for work. She was raped by a hotel employee, and when she went to report it she was arrested because she was admitting to sex outside of marriage. I consider it a practice, but in Germany they often do not use spaghetti sauce, instead they use ketchup. I learned firsthand the pain. Duckin' terrifying. I did go with the Sambia people making their prepubescent boys suck their dicks as a coming-of-age ritual. And yes, they are required to swallow. Yes, it is horrific, and you have to wonder, how did it get started? Was it child abuse institutionalized as ritual, or did the people who started it really believe it worked? The in-culture theory is, when young they were drinking a female substance, breast milk, so to make sure they are masculine, they need to drink a male substance, semen. During an employee training lecture, I learned that in some Asian cultures, not making eye contact is actually a sign of respect towards superiors. It's the complete opposite in America. So it was kind of cool to learn. I do not know how it is in other Asian cultures, but in Korea, you have to show respect to elders even when drinking. You have to not only pour for your elders, but when you take a shot, you have to turn away from them as you drink. Female genital mutilation. When I first read about this in college, I had nightmares for years about this. It's not so much about pleasure, but just the pain it must cause on a day-to-day basis. Absolutely horrifying and cruel to anyone. The traumas 14-year-old me got from only hearing stories about this and reading one book about someone who felt they had to go through with it. I do not think there is a single book I have ever regretted reading more than that one. I was definitely too young for it. I always thought insemination rituals were bizarre as duck. Took a cultural anthropology course in college that briefly touched of different insemination rituals. Usually semen is rubbed on skin or ingested by coming-of-age boys as a ritual to become men. Some cultures have other bizarre rites of passage. One comes to mind. In the Amazon there's a group that engages in pain rituals with bullet ants. People are weird. Worldwide, since prehistory, is not there another practice where boy's manhood ritual is to masturbate into a scrap of hide and then wear it as a good luck charm when they hunt fight? Blaming the following generations for the sins of their mothers and fathers seems to be an extremely common practice that I just find ducked all the heck up. The insert any generation between the ages 13-35 have ruined this country because of their insert popular thing. Oh, it's like a Mad Lib. I love those. The millennials have ruined this country because of their poop. Laughing. The millennials have ruined this country because of their over-consumption of avocados. Cannibalism. Depends on the context in my view. I've heard some cultures did it to mourn their dead. The breeding of pugs. To be honest, the breeding of most dogs, I love dogs, but the breed standards for so many are now harmful to the dog. Pugs, Frenchies etc. are awful because they cannot breathe properly, but German Shepherds for example have now been bred so their backs and hips are shocking. Sharps being bred for their wrinkled skin which causes irritation. The breed standards need to change really, and we need to stop overbreeding dogs for their looks with no consideration to their health. They try with suggesting they are avoiding the worst of it via genetic testing. And it does help, but many of the things that are being bred for are messed up in the first place. The farther you go from a normal dog shape, size, fur etc., and the younger the breed, the more messed up. Corgis, wiener dogs, too long back problems. Pugs, bulldogs, any dog with a shortened muzzle, breathing problems, possibly severe. I mean, if you bred these dogs out once or twice you had have a very similar looking dog, who does not have significant health issues. Do you have any examples of dogs that do not have health problems like the dogs above? I know next to nothing about it, and if I get a dog I do not want one that has had its health sacrificed in the name of breeding. Declawing cats where the practice is still allowed. It is pitiful to see house cats return home from the vet with their paws bandaged up, trembling with each step and unable to defend themselves should the need arise. Debeaking is another atrocious practice among poultry to make them more amiable in farms. The acute pain due to trimming of beak, which is full of neural networks, is horrendous. Link. But hey, it is so much more convenient and cheaper than keeping smaller flock sizes where the animals are able to learn to know each other. Establish hierarchy and not Beatrice to high heck. I've always thought open casket funerals were very, very weird. I've been to two. The corpses didn't look much like the people who used to occupy them. Also, maybe I just live in a stupidly expensive city, but cemeteries don't seem like a very efficient use of land. ILL go watch Poltergeist now. Open casket funerals are creepy when you think about it. You are looking at a dead body, and the person looks more like they are sleeping. That some parents literally beat their kids if they do not get an A. Edit. Please do not try to defend beatings. I cannot handle the thought of it. It is disgusting, and if you disagree then just do not comment. If you think your child's grades are more important than their mental and physical health, and you beat them when they are not 100% perfect, you have officially failed as a parent. You cannot change my mind. My parents used to beat me, not in a manner that will get me injured if I don't get as. Hello fellow Asian. On our killings, deliberately murdering your own children because of some kind of family honor. It's not just their own either. Some places will kill people who aren't related to them because of affairs or attraction. Pedophilia. There are so many people who think it is okay to rape children, and so many people who protect the rapists. I agree. That is very twisted. There is a difference between being kinky and being a monster. People calling kids spoiled brats if the kid does not want to share their property. Even if the kid asks nicely. Even if the kid is a complete stranger. Sometimes the adult physically grabs the property and gives it to the kid who asked. Meanwhile, adults can just not share their property and nobody will force them to share it. My mom did that. Then it was my fault if my stuff got stolen or if it was damaged. I wasn't allowed to be upset. It was infuriating. Sexualizing minors on television with makeup and small clothing. Why circulate the garbage? Dress a 16-year-old in something appropriate. I feel like TikTok allows a lot of this as well. I am not shocked by the 16-year-old so much as pageant children. 3-year-olds being waxed and plucked, faked and put in heels and fed caffeine to make them more stage-friendly. The fact this is not only legal but socially acceptable is appalling. Worshipping celebrities. Huge cultural practice where I am from. People know all sorts of random little details of famous people's lives. You mean Tamil Nadu mainly? He meant India and the cult of Salman Khan. The duck you, I got mine mentality. The amount of narcissism and self-entitlement needed to actively throw others under the bus to ensure you personally make it through or get what you want is incomprehensible. The duck you, I got mine mentality. It is more than that. There is a pervasive notion among some that I have not succeeded unless others have failed. They would be perfectly happy burning society to be king of the ashes, even if such a condition were manifestly worse than they are at present. The leopard men of Guyana select a victim and then kill them by stuffing various herbs deep into every one of their orifices. After the family buries the person, the leopard men come and dig up the corpse and rebury it in a place convenient for them. They leave it to rot a while and then come back with long reeds that they poke into the ground and into the corpse to drink the juice produced by the rotting body. They believe this gives them special powers, like shape-shifting. They usually eventually get really sick and die young. The populace have carved special wood clubs with spikes to kill leopardmen with. ETA switch Guinea to Guyana. Sorry for the error. What? Coming inside socks. Yeah, I just do it on my hands. I do not get why people do it on socks. Let it dry and then peel it off like Elmer's glue. I swallow it immediately when it is still snotty. Humans paying other humans to mutilate, abuse, exploit and kill animals purely for pleasure. Yeah, bullfighting is atrocious.